is golf instructor Steve Bishop, and I know this is a bit unorthodox for me not to be doing one of these presentations out on the golf course and instead of doing it in my living room. But it's raining outside. It's Sunday, the weekend before the Super Bowl down here in Glendale, Arizona. And with all the rain outside, unfortunately I can't even do this outside on my front porch, so I'm just going to have to do it right here. Now the reason why I had such urgency to do this is because there's a thread going on one of the forums that I subscribe to, which is discussing this hip action. And I made a statement that, you know, the biggest thing that I think needs to be emphasized with any sort of hip action is a push off with the right. Well, you may have seen my hip action video that I did do out at Rio Salado the other day, but there's something that's going on with this form that I think is very important to address here. And that is, this push off with the right needs to have a direction, okay? And that direction needs to put you in a balanced position. Understand that basically you have your hind end here, which establishes the back side of basically the backward boundary of where your weight is, while your shoulders basically establish with the forward progression of where your balance is. So you have this boundary in front of you, you have this boundary back behind you. And the deeper you get, the more knee flex that you have. Notice that there's a greater amount of width between where my hind end is and my shoulders. Okay? The taller I stand up, the thinner and narrower my ability to keep this balance going. So a little bit of knee bend is good because you don't want to be standing straight up and down. Now it's a little bit harder to create any sort of torque and keep your lower body, basically keeping your upper body in balance. And that's actually why the hip action is so important. It does two key things. It maintains your balance, and it also maintains the spine tilt or axis tilt. Okay? Your axis tilt is basically your spine. As you perceive it in the down the line view, it's going to be this angle that you see this way. And then also in the face-on view, it's going to be this angle that you see with the tilt this direction. Now, if you set up straight, just straight up at address with the golf ball, your spine is going to be straight up and down in the face-on view, but angled over a little bit in the down the line view. Now what happens is, in the forward swing, what's going to happen is the upper body stays left behind while the hips make a slight bump forward. Notice that this shift, this bump, puts my axis tilt at a slight angle like this in the face-on view. It's still going to be, and if I just progress forward here to my forward swing here, I'm still going to maintain this angle here with my back. Okay? Those two angles, this tilt back this direction and then the tilt over the ball, is what is going to allow my right shoulder to basically move downward towards the golf ball. Okay? That's a very complex progression of things that happen one at a time, a chain of events that causes that right shoulder to basically be able to go down to the golf ball. It all starts with a proper hip action, okay? And that is this right hip basically pushing to go in the direction towards the target. Notice that this right hip pushing is actually also going to move my left hip. Now, if I moved my left hip specifically to get out of the way, I would create a twisting action. And notice that that twisting action of moving my left hip does nothing for my spine angle. You see that? See, if I'm standing straight up and down and I twist my left hip out of the way, I am still standing straight up and down. And notice that my spine tilt has not changed. You see, that's why it's so important to have that hip bump to go along with the turn. Now, the reason why I say push off with the right is because you are loading up all of your weight basically onto your right leg if you're doing it properly. I know there's some people that like the stack and tilt where you're basically keeping over your left and letting your right move, but I'm just going to keep this discussion primarily to conventional swings. You basically have your weight on your right foot, just on the instep of your right foot. And because all of the pressure is on this right foot, that's the muscular area that is going to have to push away and push that body forward. And it needs to be with the hips first. Obviously, you don't want to do something where you're leaning forward this way to relieve the pressure off the foot. You want to relieve the pressure basically off of the toe of your right foot. Is the last pressure point on the ground. Okay? So by doing this action here with the right, you are doing two things. You are causing the hips to rotate, and you're causing the hip bump that we always want to try to maintain, to get that axis tilt for impact, is that push with the right. Instead of trying to clear the left, you want to push the right forward. Now, I'm going to show you in the down the line view, the direction has to be somewhat at an angle that this right hip is going. Okay? It's not going straight into my left hip. It's not going out towards the golf ball. The direction that that right hip has to go is basically right over the toe of my left foot. And if you watch very carefully, you're going to see that the direction that my right knee and right hip move is towards the toe of my left foot. And that is what drops that right shoulder basically downwards more, instead of allowing it to come where most people, if they clear their left hip, now you see that right shoulder kicks out away, okay? Whereas instead, again, what we want is the right hip and the right knee kick towards the toe of my left foot. And that is going to cause my spine tilt to increase just slightly, so that when I'm doing this, my right shoulder is dropping downwards and going more downward towards the golf ball, which puts the club basically dissecting between my right shoulder and the ball. Is going on a straight plane directly to the golf ball, just because my right shoulder, instead of going this way and then going down, it's dropping downwards first, and then I can hit to the golf ball from the inside. But it all again starts with the direction that that right hip and the right knee move towards the toe of the left foot, in order to allow for both the hip bump going forward, right? The hip bump, now you can see the spine tilt is increased, and then the rotation of my hips allows for the unwinding and basically the torque that's being placed on the upper body to help increase the speed comes from the hip turn. As I'd like to progress a little bit more into some discussion about the hips and why some things feel so good, but I think at this point, I think you get a pretty good understanding of why I say so many times you need to push off with the right and make sure that the direction is good. Okay, it's not really how fast you turn your hips. As a matter of fact, you want speed. You want them to go fast. You just need to make sure that that right hip is going in the right direction.